Welcome back, darlings. We are on day 4 of our Halloween week. My name is 42, and 2 got us the stories for this one. And we're halfway through our week, but don't worry, I'm not done yet. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. I always hate when my parents drag me to the family reunion. Shaking, I watch as my parents inspect every hanging body inside the freezer. Halloween Night by Anonymoose. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, I lived on a university campus in an Arab country because both of my parents worked at the university hospital. Every year during Halloween, all the kids and teenagers of the parents who lived there would go trick-or-treating. It was a lot of fun and some of my fondest memories. However, there was one night I distinctly remember being absolutely terrified. Me and a bunch of friends were nearing the end of our trick-or-treating when some of the older kids decided to wander off the path. It was very late as well. I was of course hesitant, but had to follow them as our parents strictly instructed us to stick with the older kids. At some point, I remember being exhausted of walking and just took a moment to catch my breath. Now, we're in an extremely isolated, hilly area at night. I was terrified. I decided to take a 360-degree glance around the area when I saw a woman standing on top of one of the hills. Now, I don't remember much, but I could distinctly see her holding a knife, and she had 2 cats laying on her side. To this day, I have no clue if she was just casually hanging out with her kittens on Halloween night or whether she had something more sinister planned for the cats. I don't even know if the cats were alive. Unsurprisingly, I bolted without looking back. I left the campus a long time ago, but I still wonder about its underbelly. My next-door neighbors have been charged with child endangerment after an 11-year-old daughter was found locked in a cage in the basement. Being the person that built the cage, I'm feeling sorry for the people looking after her. She hits puberty soon. Peeping Tom by ferrarisareoverrated. Years ago, when me and my brothers were kids, we lived with our parents in a suburb in a small town. Here we were surrounded by houses on one side and a large open mountain range on the other. On Halloween night, I'm guessing somewhere between 04 and 06, my mother had to put us to bed, and my dad worked away sailing ships at the time. So she was all alone watching TV in the living room downstairs. She noticed something in the corner of her eye and felt the sudden sensation of being watched. In the window next to her, she could see someone in a Halloween mask looking straight towards her. At first, it freaked her out, but she brushed it off as someone being funny. After all, it was Halloween. But as some time went by and the person still hadn't moved, she decided enough was enough and she drew the blinds. Sometime later, she decided to go to bed and went to double check if the doors were locked. And through the small one-way glass in the door, she saw the person still standing there, face up close to the same window, despite not being able to see anything through it. This freaked her out, and she opened the door with a loud bang. The window he stood by was roughly 10 meters or so away from the main entrance door, so she wasn't in any harm's way. Luckily, that seemed to scare him off, and he was never seen again. I gazed at myself in the mirror in awe, twirling around in my mother's wedding dress. If only the old bitch wasn't so difficult about me having it, then she could have seen me wearing it too. A man took pictures of kids in their Halloween costumes in his home. By Taratypes. This happened when I was 10 or 11, so we're going back to 2006 or 7. It was Halloween night, and it was the first time my parents were letting me go trick-or-treating alone with my friends, without an adult. Keep in mind, this was a very small town that I was born into and grew up in. And it was the type of community where adults would look out for everyone's children, not just their own. So there were adults present around us the entire night, just not any trailing my particular group of 3, me and my 2 best friends. The night had gone without a hitch. We picked a few streets in the small town to go up and down to collect our candy and our empty pillowcases. It was probably around 7 in the evening, just before our 8:20 curfew. We went down one of the less populated streets where there were a few houses shaped like domes. Think Patrick's Rock from SpongeBob, only a lot more glass. I hadn't really gone down that street too many times before. I didn't know anyone who lived there, but we made our merry way down there in hopes for some Reese's or Kit Kats. We quickly came to realize that most of the houses were dark, and when a house is dark on Halloween, it tells you not to knock. However, one of the dome houses was lit up, so we walked up to it and prepared ourselves for more sugar. When the door opened, a man answered. He was at least in his 40s, definitely middle-aged. It's hard to figure out how old someone is when it's the memory from an 11-year-old. I knew he wasn't a father of any of the kids I knew, but he seemed friendly enough. He invited us inside for candy, and because we were raised in such a bubble of a town, we obliged. Luckily, we weren't met with any death or impending danger. Instead, we were met with a Polaroid camera. The man told us he wanted to take a picture of our Halloween costumes for the local newspaper, and he motioned to the left of us, where a corkboard of Polaroid sat, displaying at least a dozen photographs of kids from the neighborhood cheesing at the camera in their costume. So, again, we stupidly obliged. I remember feeling a little uneasy, but after the photo, he gave us candy and we were on our way home. When I told my mom about it later that night, she was horrified, of course. She called up the other moms, and the 3 of us got a nice, long lecture on stranger danger. Something we had been previously taught, but ignored. We scoured the local paper and the surrounding town papers for photos of the town's kids in Halloween costumes. But we never found any. I didn't feel as if he was capable of actually hurting us, but I do count myself lucky that nothing bad did happen. She dimmed the lights, lit candles, and uncovered the crystal ball. Everything was ready to let the couple to see their past child. The fire caused by the fallen candle reunited the whole family. Halloween at a corner store. by Anonymoose. I work at a small convenience store in a fairly small town in Kansas, and have been on overnight shifts for what feels like forever. It's typically pretty busy, and most of you in the Midwest would know the place if I told you the name. Just know that it's the one that sells the mediocre pizza that hits differently in the middle of the night. Anyways, I've worked at this particular location for several years, and because I'm the only employee that doesn't have any children, I've had to pretty much work every single holiday we've been open, including Christmas, Independence Day, and, of course, Halloween. Honestly, I don't mind it. We typically aren't too busy on these days, but Halloween can be a little bit more of a hassle because people like to walk into the store in full costume. This may not sound like a big deal, but people walking into a convenience store, a type of store that is well known for being robbed, with their face covered by latex Freddy Krueger masks, is definitely not an ideal situation. Because of this, when people would enter wearing their masks, I would politely ask them to take them off while they were in the store. Most people were okay with this request, though there were the odd few that just ignored me and went on getting their items. Annoying, sure, but there wasn't anything I could do about it. The whole situation actually took place on Halloween, obviously. It was a fairly standard night with a good number of people coming in, mostly out of costume until around 8, when all the costume people started coming in. Then business overall just kind of tapered off around 9:30, and there were only a few people coming in to buy soda, energy drinks, and various mixers for their parties. As I did, most people that came into the store in costumes were cool with it when I asked them to remove their masks. A few of them just walked past me and ignored my request. But again, nothing I could do to enforce the rule, so I just kind of let it go and kept my eye on them as best I could. Then, sometime around 10, a group of people walked in, all in costumes. There were a few college-age girls, a couple of guys with them, all talking rather loudly as they came in the door. They were all in costumes, but only one of them had a mask that covered their face. A Jason Voorhees-style hockey mask with a cloth in the back that covered the person's hair, and they were wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit. Of course, it was all covered in fake blood and painted to look dirty, and it looked good. But I was a bit nervous that this guy covered his face like that. As he walked by, I mentioned I liked his costume, but asked him that he please remove his mask. Not to my surprise, he ignored me and walked back to the cooler section of the store. I shrugged it off, and figured that since he was with a group of at least 4 other people, he wasn't likely to do anything. I waited up at the register for them to finish their browsing, and after about 5 minutes or so, the group of people came up to the register and bought an ungodly amount of Red Bull. I rang them up, they paid, and then left. Thankfully, it was a quick and painless transaction. It wasn't until they had gotten outside that I realized the group that had checked out was only the ones without their masks. Mr. Voorhees didn't leave with them. This didn't quite rub me the right way. Mostly because I had been banking on him being with a group of people as justification for being okay with him covering his face in the first place. My first thought, and again I was trying to rationalize and make it okay in my head, was he had just gone to the restroom and was probably going to exit the store after a few minutes. Well, a few minutes passed and still no Voorhees. There was a certain level of nervousness about the situation. I wasn't keen on being stuck behind the register with this guy doing God knows what in the small section behind me. Mostly because I couldn't see anything in the section where he went, which was a really bad design flaw in this store. Sure, there were cameras, but having a blind spot in a store like this was really a bad idea. I decided that the best course of action was to go ahead and make sure that this guy wasn't loading a bunch of soda into his pocket or something. Thankfully, I was out of water, so I had an excuse to walk away from the counter for a moment. So I stepped down from the raised area and took my cup back to the fountain to fill it. I slowly went around the corner towards the fountain and glanced over towards the coolers. There was no one there. I walked over to the other side, and once again, no one. I was confused, but I just accepted that it was possible that he had walked out the side door and I just didn't notice at some point in time. I shrugged it off and went to fill my cup, then started my way back towards the register, which is the last thing I remember doing, before then waking up to a paramedic asking me if I could hear him. I was incredibly confused as to why I was staring at the ceiling of the store, why this guy was asking me if I knew what year it was, and why the hell the back of my head was in so much pain. As it was explained to me, and also later shown to me on security footage, walking over to the fountain was a terrible idea. Apparently, Mr. Voorhees had remained in the store and was looking for me to do something to leave me vulnerable. In the footage, this guy seriously crept around the corner when I was filling my cup, and when I turned away to go back to my register, he smacked me in the back of the head with some kind of club. This guy had a clean shot of me, and he took it. Completely knocked me unconscious. What's worse, watching the footage, this guy did this seemingly for no reason. After I was knocked unconscious, he stood over me and stared at me without moving for several moments, then walked away. He didn't take a single thing from the store. He just attacked me and walked off. Even crazier, he was the one that called 911 from the payphone outside. From what I was told, he called them and told them that a person in the store was unconscious on the floor and then hung up. From there, the paramedics arrived and sure enough, found me on the floor. To the best of my knowledge, this guy was never found or arrested, and nobody has any idea why this happened. The thought of what he could have done scares the hell out of me. But I guess I'm glad that he just looked at to knock someone out for fun and not rob, or worse, murder someone. This was also the last shift I closed alone. And we now have 3 people that work overnight shift on Halloween. I normally have sleep paralysis, so when I saw a gray, bony creature on my chest, I wasn't too worried. Until I moved my arm. I know you enjoyed that video, darling, so hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this channel or podcast, share it with anyone you know will enjoy it. If you'd like to help in other ways, 242 has set up a Patreon, merch, and PayPal. If you'd like to see what social medias she has made, check out that tree link. It will have everything you need and more. I would also like to see a comment down below on what you think. See you tomorrow, darlings. Sleep tight and don't let me bite.